This week, Chainsaw Man Rize movie comes out, and it's honestly my favorite arc in the entire manga. I think it balances out having its fair share of slower character moments, while also playing into the absurdity of, well, it's Chainsaw Man after all. And in order to celebrate the film coming out, I knew I wanted to talk about the IP on the channel. And I've seen a lot of my contemporaries talk about this anime. A lot of people are just putting Pochita up against other anime characters, and while that's pretty cool, I wanted to do my own thing. So why not go over the best character in the entire series, without a doubt, being Kobeni, whose entire character is that she's this poor devil hunter that's got a regular deal with these eldritch horrors in order to get a minimum wage paycheck. And when she's not dealing with actual demons, she's working fast food. So to all my fans who've worked at fast food places, is there really even a difference? But anyways, when you say it like that, her premise sounds very similar to the situations that the protagonists of indie mascot horror games find themselves facing. So seeing as how Kobeni is one of the weaker characters from this IP, I wanted to put her in a lot of mascot horror games to see if she could actually finish the shifts presented in those IPs. Like, how would Kobeni deal with working at Fazbear's Entertainment, Joey Studios, or even Poppy Playtime? Hence the topic of this week's video. So if that sounds interesting to you, then be sure to stick around, as we're going to be covering Kobeni as well as the scaling of tons of indie horror games, all in order to see if Kobeni could realistically finish these shifts. So if that sounds interesting to you, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. We've already hit 100k, so we're clearly hitting the ground running at this point. We post tons of shorts throughout the week, as well as long format videos like this, so considering everything that you see is free, you're going to be getting a lot of content out of me. But with that being said, let's get into the topic that you clicked the video to find out. Puppet Combo is honestly my favorite game developer of indie horror games. These guys make a lot of elite stuff. So I knew I wanted to include them in the video, but when trying to find the criteria of a shift, two games really came to mind, being Night Ripper and Murder House, as these games focus on shy or timid female protagonists either having to leave work or just work in very dangerous environments. So the threats that we're going to be talking about here are the Easter Ripper and the Night Ripper respectively. And as terms of feats, these guys are relatively streamlined, as while both of these characters are extremely fast and should be in that superhuman speed range, in terms of their physicals, for the Night Ripper, it's just like regular human level. He only has things that would include him game-ending humans with weapons like knives and such. But the Easter Ripper is a little bit more impressive, as he's just street to wall level, as in the game, he's able to very gorely dismember some of the other characters. I can't show it on screen due to YouTube systems, but let's just say he has a lot of street to wall level feats. If you're interested, there's tons of Let's Plays on YouTube that go over the game and such. But yeah, that's really it for the most part. So how will Kobeni deal with street to wall level characters with superhuman speeds? And well, I think she'd be fine, as despite what people think, Kobeni's actually pretty strong. And I know it's hard to remember because she's so cowardly and timid, but you gotta also take into account that these are eldritch horrors that she's up against. Because I mean, as a baseline, Devil Hunter suits are stated to be very, very durable. We'll get into the extent of how durable later, but as a mere baseline, we have no-name hunters being able to endure small building level explosions. And in terms of her physical, she can cut through limbs as well, and she can also cut through the fabric we just mentioned to have small building level durability. So whether it's evading the Night Ripper and making her way home safely, or filming whatever she needs to get filmed during the mock shift documentary production during the events of Murder House, she can easily get the job done, and she has the physicals to more than likely overpower any of her pursuers. So with that being said, let's move on to much more powerful and well-known mascot horror antagonists. Five Freddy's is probably the most famous mascot indie horror game of all time. And while I'm not going to cover the entire verse, I do feel like I want to talk about at least the original FNAF game. And while we're here, I'm also going to be talking about Poppy's Playtime. Let's just put these two games in the same section of the video, just to make it a little bit more extensive, as FNAF 1 doesn't have the most extensive scaling chains, but it has enough to where we can talk about it. As firstly, these guys are consistently confirmed to be able to dismember human beings. It's the first thing that we learn about these animatronics, as the newspaper that has the job opening confirms this to be the case. And there's also the fact that these animatronics are able to smush human beings to the extent in which they're just, forced into these animatronic shells, which in itself will be a wall level feat. But we have even more good stuff to talk about, as the OG FNAF crew should upscale their twisted variants. As in the Twisted Ones novel, the FNAF animatronics are able to just dismember the Twisted gang entirely. story. And while the novels aren't exactly the same canon as the games, Scott Cawthon has gone on record to establish that major plot points and elements between both continuities should be relative. So miscellaneous things like the power demonstrated by the animatronics should be, comparable between continuities. And while the twisted animatronics are able to bust through walls to a small building level yield, the OGs are just able to beat them up. The building level range is consistent as in the Week Before novel, which is a prequel to the OG game. It stated that the FNAF crew are able to harness the energy of the building, all in order to boost things like their movement speed and capabilities. The book makes this easy for us as it gives us a verbatim value being 1.21 gigawatts, which would mean that these animatronic shells can endure and output building level amounts of energy. Moving on to their speed, they're all very, very fast, obviously, with things such as their in-game movement being representations of their canonical speed. So, they're not phasing in and out of existence or teleporting. This is literally just them running across the map at such speeds. So, seeing as how they're so fast that most of the fans that they were unironically teleporting, that's easily some subsonic combat speeds and reactions that they get. So, let's get into the Poppy Playtime scaling. And pretty much the series isn't finished yet, so I can't really put Kobeni in the events of the main game, but I can have her go through the multiplayer experience of Project Playtime. So basically, she's still going to be trapped in the factory and she's going to want to get out. So it's not that big a difference. So let's go over the scaling of the monsters in Playco. Alright, due to us putting Kobeni in the events of Project Playtime, she's only going to be going into contact with Huggy Wuggy, Mommy, Longlegs, Catnap, and Boxy Boo. No Chapter 4, guys. So, anyways, in terms of the scaling chain between these characters, Mob Entertainment in a tweet implies that Catnap is the strongest, while also subtly confirming that Mommy Longlegs is the least impressive of these characters. It's just really in the wording of the tweet, but with that being said, it doesn't really matter, as they should all scale generally in the same places, right? With Huggy Wuggy being the gauge for the AP and speed, as he can dent metal, break bones, and he's shown the ability to dent the metal of a vent while chasing you to a nearly small building level yield. And during the trailer for Project Playtime, he's literally able to dent a steel door, which also gets up to around small building level. This is consistent as Miss Delight can output building level amounts of energy just in casual swings of her mace, so everyone at the baseline is around building level. And as for the speed, I've talked about Huggy Wuggy, and he's a character who can blitz human beings, he's able to catch deers and wildlife, and he's able to dodge tranquilizer darts. So that's a subsonic character right there, and everyone should be relative to him for the most part. So when looking at Kobeni now and how she compares to FNAF 1 and Poppy Playtime, I think it's fair to say that she would be able to survive these threats, as going back to that explosion that standard Devil Hunter gear can no-sell, and it's been founded by my friend Ace of Spades that this blast is ironically around large building level, meaning that Kobeni's knife being able to puncture through and cut through such constructs, and taking into account that she's literally just wearing the same stuff, and it would mean that Kobeni is around 8 times more powerful and durable than what is shown in FNAF, and she would be around 7 times more powerful and durable than what is shown in Poppy Playtime. And due to her ability to just dodge bullets, she would be faster than these threats as well. So while Kobeni isn't going to be boxing with the animatronics or trying to directly go on a confrontation with the horrors of Poppy Playtime, but if she found herself in a situation in which she was cornered, she could definitely fend off these threats, assuming that she isn't immediately paralyzed in fear of these threats. Though that might only be a thing that's a factor when she's really out of her league. I think with characters that are just weaker than her, she would be able to lock in on them, though it would not be her first option, as I suspect she would actually try to just complete these shifts. So with that being said, let's move on to even greater competition. The Ink Demon from Bendy and the Ink Machine is perhaps one of the most powerful mascot horror characters, but I think he's a little bit more wank than he should be. Oh, what am I kidding? He's way more wank than he should be. Do you guys really want to hear my reasoning as to why Bendy is not universal? No, didn't think so. But hey, if you're really adamant about him being universal, why don't you just comment it down below or something. But anyways, to everyone else, Bendy from Bendy the Ink Machine is a very powerful character, with him being able to destroy huge sections of the factory, which come out to around city block level. This is consistent as he has tons, and I mean tons, of very casual wall to building level showings, and that's pretty much it for the most part in terms of his objective quantifiable scaling. He upscales characters, and he himself has shown the ability to passively literally shake the factory, or at least portions of it. It's never really stated that the world itself is shaking. Maybe it's like a certain section or whatever. And yep, that's pretty much it. Alright, fine, I'll talk about why I don't think he's universal. Basically, the cycle of Bendy Ink Machine is that, every time, a playthrough happens, it just resets at the end of it, right? And there are tons of statements that imply that this cycle is a separate space-time. It's infinite, it's parallel to the real world. It doesn't abide the laws of physics and all that jazz. And basically, people take a lot of hyperbolic statements or just miscontort certain statements to imply Bendy is a being that scales above this cycle in general when he's literally bound by it. Like, Bendy can't be more powerful than the cycle. When the cycle literally resets him upon his defeat, it recreates him upon his defeat, and it continues after his defeat. He's bound by its mechanics, while characters like Audrey and the Ink Machine itself actually control it. Where Bendy just says that, "Grr, it's my realm," when he's just claiming dominion over it. It's like saying the President of the United States is a country buster just because he's the de facto commander-in-chief. Like, no, that's not what's being said here. But anyways, we have a city block level character here. And honestly, the Bendy talks got me a little tired at the moment. So I'm going to take a break and pass the mic to one of my close compadres.
It's about time we talk about the better Miwa. But on a real note, Kobeni is no slouch. One of her most casual showings, completely perception blitzing a human katana man and effortlessly cutting off his arm. Said feat would have warrant her over 1500 joules of energy, and along with her perception blitz, she can casually outspeed and maneuver over bullets, which would be in those subsonic speed ranges, already establishing herself in those superhuman territories, and we're just getting started. However, quickly, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Mr. Crafty from Mr. Crafty Scales, and Goji has called me again to his side for my area of expertise when it comes to all things manga and anime, especially when it comes to these more dark fantasy ones. And he would have been biased there. I'm joking. Or am I? But back to the actual scale, Kobeni can casually pierce through Aki's standard issue devil hunting suits, which are in lore able to withstand attacks from said devils. We see not even the full suits can endure attacks from the Bat Devil and a sonic blast, with it only becoming unbuttoned a bit tattered. Said blast has at a minimum been found that would have needed energy equivalent to 91 tons of TNT, and even up to 622 tons. This, mind you, would mean even at a minimum that standard issue devil hunter suits can take damage equal to that of several cluster bombs hitting them, and Kobeni can accidentally cut through essentially layers of this material. This by all means is consistent, as even the Katana Man was able to do similar damage with his strongest technique, mind you, to said clothing, and he is someone who fights a pre-training arc Denji pretty consistently, and he's the one that actually tanked the Sonic Blast in the first place. And for a potential higher end, and again this one's interpretational, as if you think that the standard issue Devil Hunter suits don't have any higher degrees of durability, then we have seen that these clothes have even endured when the full Chainsaw Man Devil tackled Quan Chi into several buildings with the actual destructive energy caused by the hit, not the attack potency, as that's a different story, gets between 1 to 2 kilotons of force, or enough energy to wipe small towns off the maps. Again, this is assuming Makima didn't just make the suit stronger, however this is never implied, so pick your poison. Speed being just as impressive, as she's even shown to be able to be faster than the Snake Devil, the same devil that perception blitzed the Ghost Devil, with said Ghost Devil being superior to Aki even when he is able to see into the future, which should scale her above both Aki and the Angel Devil's respective reaction speeds of being able to react and intercept bullets to such degrees. It has been calculated that it would warrant Mach 2.98 speeds, which due to her upscale she would realistically be at the minimum of Mach 3. To put in perspective how crazy this essential fodder in comparison to other verses are, not only would she meet the grade 1 requirements of Jujutsu Kaisen with the whole Carpet Bomb scale, but if you put her in the Goodwill arc and swap her with Todo and Yuji, she would do much better against Hanami and might just exercise her. But that's all for our cowardly goat. Let's see how good she does.
Thanks, Crafty, for covering Kobeni now. Let me get back on the Bendy talk. And with the stats Crafty presented, Kobeni actually stands a decent chance against the Ink Demon, though I don't think that that's really the priority here. The video was about whether or not she could survive these scenarios, and with the stats presented, if she had the same help and went through the same experiences as the MCs of the previous games did, she would easily be more than capable of getting this job done. As for starters, she should be able to confidently confidently defeat any of the major bosses and enemies in the game, and with the stats that Crafty talked about, she might even be able to stagger and knock out the Ink Demon for at least a little bit. So yeah, she's pretty capable, and yes, I think that unironically, she would be able to survive the Mascot horror games that I presented here. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for this week's video. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And are there any other horror games that you want to see me cover on the channel before Halloween passes? I've got around a week before Halloween actually drops, and I could be dropping tons of shorts and videos between that time frame and now. But either way, as always, I'll see you guys next week with another video. But until then, stay Big G fans.